Thanks for attending Clearfly's portal training, Understanding Voice Group Information and Real-Time Switch Info. My name is Tom Hall, and I will be your host for the next 20 to 30 minutes. Many of you are experiencing some delays with your internet connection, mainly due to the oversaturation of most of the data networks. If you are having difficulty hearing me or understanding the presentation, please let me know. You can do so by raising your hand using the Zoom buttons. And it depends on how you're viewing this presentation. It may be at the top of the screen or at the bottom. Or you can always send me a chat message and let me know that as well. If the audio is poor, I may end up rescheduling that or this training session for a later date and time. But we're going to make the assumption right now that we're going to proceed forward. And so let's go ahead and get started. During this session, we are going to be reviewing three specific areas within the Clearfly portal: the voice group information, the real-time switch information, and the telephone number information. This is a review. We will not be going through how to make changes to any of those. That will come in a follow-up training session, which will start in roughly 45 minutes or so. All right, so within each of these three categories, we have some things that we're going to look at specifically. Under voice group information, we're going to look at the CNAM, or the name associated with the phone numbers. We're going to look at the 911 addresses. We're also going to look at the local calling areas, which is very relevant if you have sold metered SIP trunks, meaning local calling is free. Any long distance calling is charged at a per minute rate. We're also going to look at the status of the numbers, whether they're pending or they're active. And we are also going to go over how to download a list of the phone numbers to present to your customer if they're curious to know all of their phone numbers that they have. Telephone number information, we're also going to look at the CNAM on a per telephone number basis. We're also going to look at messaging, and what that really is SMS messaging enabled phone numbers. We're also going to look at individual forwarding of each DID number to an unavailable forward number or an unconditional forward number. Under real-time switch info, we're going to take a look at the trunk quantities. We're also going to look at the forwarding as a group. So the blanket forwarding for all numbers that do not have individual number forwarding enabled, as well as whether bursting is enabled or not enabled, or disabled, or it's not enabled, international calling tiers, and blocking numbers. We'll also look at the SIP trunk registration to see if it is a registered SIP trunk connection from Clearfly to the PBX or if it is a static registration. And also whether the 911 mode is testing or not. All right? Okay, so let's jump right into the demo portal. So if you have been on any of these presentations before, you know that this is a demo portal. Some of the links and some of the buttons I press may not have any information within them. If that does appear to be the case, I will try to jump over and pull up a live customer so we can look at their relevant information. Since you're on this training session, I'm going to make the assumption that you do have management, support, and provisioning permissions within the Clearfly portal. When you log into the Clearfly portal, if you do not see this section down here, please reach out to your administrator or your primary contact at Clearfly or myself, and we will see if we can get that permission level activated for you. So let's go ahead, since what we're really talking about is from a project management or from a technical support perspective, we're going to come into the management dashboard. and we're going to find a customer to take a look at. We're going to use widgets, mainly because widgets is, I know everything is populated. So we're going to use the widget account. I'm going to go to their account. And what we're going to focus on for this session is going to be the voice tab. If we click the voice tab, you can see here that widgets currently has 2 different voice groups. Most of your customers are only going to have 1. So this is the voice group. These are where the SIP trunks are and the telephone numbers are going to appear. The voice service section, this is fairly new, probably within maybe the last 6 months or so. This will list out all of the voice services or peripheral products that Clearfly has to offer. So it's going to show your e-Fax accounts, your disaster attendant, virtual voicemails, conferencing bridge. That is all going to be listed under the voice service section. All right. We'll talk about those a little bit more or in greater detail during the next training session. So what we're going to look at here is the voice group. We're going to look at voice group number 1. When we look at the voice group itself, it's going to list out the voice group ID number. It's going to list out the company's name. It's going to list out the account. So the SBN is the customer's account number, and the BAN is really the service address. So this BAN 000001, it has a service address of 1000 Lewis Avenue. The authorization code is really only used if you're testing the service prior to activating the voice group. This default calling name, that is the name associated with the phone numbers, and all of these phone numbers that do not have a name associated are automatically going to populate whatever the default calling name is here. All right. We'll go over changing that in the next training session. This is really just an overview. So this is important, especially if you're adding new phone numbers. And instead of coming to each and every one of these and setting the calling name, you're going to want to make sure that that default calling name is the proper name that the customer wants displayed. The name can be up to 15 characters, and that does include the spaces. All right. On the right-hand side, again, if we're looking at the voice group, we can see that this voice group is currently active. All right. And what active means is it's completely functional, and Clearfly is invoicing the customer for these services. It'll also show the active date, so we can see that this voice group went active on 3/24, which was yesterday. The signaling is SIP versus a PRI or an analog handoff. They currently have 10 SIP trunks. So this is the number of trunks that were quoted or you have increased this customer's account to. Bursting gives the customer the ability to have 2 standby SIP trunks. There is no charge to enable that. There is only a usage charge, meaning if they have a bursted phone call, so all 10 concurrent calls are being used, and an 11th call either comes in or somebody internally goes to dial out, they're going to access one of those 2. And they're going to be charged 25 cents for that usage per call. The directory number is the number that Clearfly utilized to build this voice group. It is a functional number, but it is something, or it is a number that shouldn't be publicized or published by the customer. What I always tell people is use this directory number for a backdoor testing number from your company if you need to make some tests at the customer's account. Multi-location trunk, it's either going to be yes or it's going to be no. If the customer has a single site and they do not have any remote IP phones, then it is most likely going to be set as no. If it is set as yes, that means that they're going to have multiple 911 registrations. There's two ways to see what numbers are registered with 911. The easiest way is to go ahead and click the registration button, and it will list out all the phone numbers, the calling name that's associated with that phone number, as well as the address that is associated with the local PSAP or the local 911 center. The other option is to just simply look at the telephone numbers and scroll down through there, and anyone with a little magnifying glass means view. And if you click on that view, you can see that this number, this is the caller's name or the CNAM and the address that has been set up for 911. So we can scroll through there and we can see both of those numbers that are set up with 911 registration. Okay. Password, it's only really relevant if you're going to be making some changes to the PBX and you need to re-register this voice service or this voice group to the PBX. If you click on show, it's going to show you the password. All right, moving down on this screen, we'll come around to the real-time switch info here shortly. As I mentioned, local calling areas, it's really only relevant if the customer is using metered SIP trunks. So Clearfly offers two different types of SIP trunks. They offer standard SIP trunks, which include local and long-distance calling throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico, or we offer metered SIP trunks. Metered SIP trunks, the local calling is free. Any long-distance outbound calls are going to be charged at a per-minute rate. So if you're curious or the customer is curious to see what their local calling area is, you can come to, again, we're at the voice group, click on local calling areas, and it is going to show you all the local phone numbers that they can call with no charge. All right, let's go back. The action button over on the right-hand side, if we click on the action button, we have a couple options. Disconnect numbers. You can disconnect phone numbers that are listed here in bulk. There's a better way to do that if you're just wanting to disconnect individual numbers, and we'll be covering that in the next session. As I went over in some previous training classes, the search recent calls gives you the ability to search phone numbers that have been made within the last 24 hours or 30 days or whatever time frame you want to search on. That is done here. Recent events, the recent events button here, again, was talked about in the previous class, but it'll tell you whether Clearfly has received some error codes from this voice group. Call analytics, same scenario as previously stated. It was covered in another class, but it gives you some usage information regarding this voice group. All right, middle of the page, you'll see 5 tabs. The first tab being all the phone numbers. It shows that the customer has 55 numbers. All the numbers are listed. It's going to show you the status. This number is being provisioned. All right. Most likely it is a number that we're porting in, and we have not received that number yet from the losing carrier. All of these other numbers that are indicating it's active are currently available to be used. And same scenario with toll-frees. We're going to indicate whether it's a toll-free number versus a local number. All right. If you would like to make a copy of this to provide to a customer or maybe save for your own records, you're going to scroll to the bottom. You're going to click as text. You can copy this and paste it into any email or document that you would like. Probably the most useful one, though, is by clicking the full tab, and it's going to list out each and every one of the phone numbers. And you're simply going to click the copy button. The calling name tab, that'll show the CNAM that's associated with each of these. Again, if there is no CNAM or calling name associated next to it, it is going to pull it from the voice group, the default CNAM that I showed you at the top of the page. Use is just simply that, saying there's 55 numbers in this voice group. All of them are subscribers or DIDs. All right, so let's close that. Scroll back up. The next tab in this section is orders. If there were any pending orders for this voice group, and a pending order could be a local port order, it could be, well, actually the orders tab, sorry, for this is going to be if there's any changes that are required for this particular voice group. The related orders are any local port orders, toll-free port orders, or any local number requests, so new numbers. So according to this, they have 4 orders that are currently residing underneath this voice group, and they're listed here. Directory listing, if Clearfly has listed a phone number in the white pages, it is going to show up here as a directory listing number. Any tickets that are associated with this particular voice group are going to be listed under the Tickets tab. So this ticket, calls cannot be completed as dialed. It's a problem. It's been associated with voice group VG1, and that is why it's shown up here. All right. If you do not see a ticket here, and you know there were previous tickets, if you click on the Show All button, it'll list out all tickets that are either open or closed. All right. There's also a history of any changes that have been made to the voice group here. You can see Joe Smith today changed the concurrent calls from 8 to 10. Joe Smith also updated the E911 mode from test to active. All right. So if you're ever wondering why the trunk count has increased or decreased, you can see who made that change if you did not. All right, let's go back. Well, actually, while we're here, let's go ahead and look at the real-time switch info. So if we click at the real-time switch info, again, this is a real-time switch info into the voice group. If you think about the voice group as the bottom of a pyramid, everything else, all the phone numbers, everything else regarding their voice services are going to be attached to the voice group. So this is the base of that pyramid. So if we're looking here, again, this is just a recap, voice group, service address. As we'd already talked about, we're currently going to send 10 digits for DIDs. If your PBX does not require 10 digits, most of them, that is the default setting. But if you have one that maybe only requires 7, we can change that to 7. We're seeing the service is active. The configured status is currently active. There is an unavailable forward number. The voice group is not set for an unconditional forward. The difference between these two, just briefly, is unavailable forward is the number that all calls are going to be routed to if Clearfly loses connectivity to the PBX. All right. Unconditional forward is really a hard forward. That means if you set an unconditional forward, anytime any of the phone numbers that are associated with this voice group is dialed, it's automatically going to route to the unconditional forward number, and it is never going to hit your phone system. Directory assistant calls or 411 calls currently allowed. We'll go over how to disable that in the next session. We can also see that anonymous call rejection, which means any phone call that comes in that does not have a phone number shown is going to be rejected. So Clearfly is not even going to let that phone call get to the phone system. Block numbers, we can see there's 2 current block numbers. You can have up to 10 of those. International calling is currently disabled. And again, we'll go through how to enable that in the next session. 911 mode means that it's currently active. You really have 3 options there. You have active, which means if somebody were to dial 911, it's going to go to the local 911 call center. If it's in test mode, when you dial 911, Clearfly is going to intercept that call. It's going to repeat back the phone number that you dialed from and the address that we have associated with that for 911 purposes. All right? And disabled, which I have no idea why anybody would disable E911 mode. That means calls to 911 are rejected on our side. I've never seen that. It's available, but I don't suspect that anybody's going to set that up. MLT, again, that is multi-location trunk. It means that there's more than one SIP trunk or more than one 911 registration. Again, we'll talk about that stuff in detail. Concurrent calls, this is where you're going to change the number of SIP trunks the customer can utilize. And bursting, this is where you're going to enable or disable that functionality. The center section here is the service status. It shows that there's currently 0 phone calls that are active. The endpoint status is active, which means that we are seeing the PBX and it is registered, and the alarms is showing that we have no alarms at this moment. All right. Further down the registration details, since we can see that this is a registered SIP trunk versus a static SIP trunk, if you want to see what Clearfly is connected to and how, you can click Load Registration Details, and it shows you that we are connecting to an asterisk PBX that is associated with IP address 8.8.8.8, and we're connecting to port 5060. SIP trunk configuration, it is kind of what it states. This is how we are connecting to the PBX and what codecs we're using. So it is a registered SIP trunk. If you want to convert that to a static one, you can go ahead and change that by clicking Convert. SIP trunk, or Clearfly SIP server or domain that you're going to have to enter into the phone system. It's going to show that here as well as the port, the username, and the password. All right. The firewall settings is only going to be relevant if you have a static SIP trunk registration. It's also stating that we are only going to transmit voice through G711 Kodak. If your PBX is using 729 as well, you're going to want to make that change. T.38 is the faxing Kodak for SIP. Currently, it is disabled. If you want to attempt to fax with a fax machine over SIP trunks, which I don't recommend, and it's one of the reasons we came out with the C-Fax product, you can go ahead and enable that. I know some PBXs have the ability to fax from the PBX itself. Zoltis does, Wildix does, a bunch of them. So if you want to give that a whirl, you can just go ahead and enable that. And then again, it shows a list of the phone numbers, primarily in ranges. Okay. Let's go back to the voice group. Let's come to the numbers. And to be the last section we're going to cover during this session. So as I indicated prior, this is going to be the list of the phone numbers. If we look at any of these phone numbers, there's a couple things. So again, it's showing the phone number, showing the rate center that it is associated with, the status, any calling name that is tied to a particular number. And as we can see with this one ending in 2003, it's Tom's home, which is going to be the name that gets sent out anytime that that phone number dials out. Subscribers simply meaning it's a DID. In the flag section over here shows any flags that we have up. So M is indicating that messaging has been enabled on these numbers. Excuse me. Let's take a look at a number specifically. So let's look at 406-794-2004. If we click on that number, within this section, you're going to see you have your own real-time switch info just for this this number. But on here, it shows that the number is associated with this voice group, is currently active, it's attached to the rate center in Billings, Montana. It's a subscriber or a DID. Calling name is generated. That means it is pulling it from the voice group. All right. 911. There's no 911 address associated with this one. So if for whatever reason you outpulse the phone number 406-794-2004 instead of the main company's number and they dial 911, it's going to come up as a unregistered 911 address and the customer is going to get billed $100. All right. What you should be sending out anytime the customer calls out is the company's main number, and that way it is going to be associated with the proper address. Messaging, again, is currently set at no, and if you want to have messaging on this number, you're going to click Add. All right. It also shows you the date that that number went active. The Actions button to the right is where you can convert this DID number to a CFAX account, or you can simply disconnect this number. All right. The real-time switch info, if we click that, this is where you can manage the forwarding for this particular number. All right. We can see that we have an unavailable forward of 702-727-8975. If we go back to the voice group real quick and we look at the real-time switch info, it is pulling that number from here. Okay? Let's go back to the voice group and let's go back to our number and real-time switch info. If you wanted to change that and have a unique forward to number, you're going to click Manage and you're going to make that change. All right. Same scenario with unconditional forward. All right. I think that is all I wanted to cover during this session. As I said, this is an overview. The next session, we will actually go into greater detail as far as how to change this or how to change the individual pieces. Again, this is kind of what we just recapped: voice group information, introduced you to the CNAM, 911 addresses, local calling areas, status of numbers, and how to download the phone numbers. From the telephone number portion, again, we introduced how the fact that you can change the CNAM on a per number basis, enabling or disabling messaging, and changing individual forwards. From a real-time switch info, when we went through that, we covered the trunk quantity, forwarding as a whole, bursting, international calling, blocking numbers, SIP trunk registrations, and 911. All right, folks, that is all I have. As always, here are the primary contacts at Clearfly from a sales perspective. Depending on who is your channel manager, it could either be Sam Johnson, Rob Lewis, Bob Jenkins, and my information is here as well. So that is it. I look forward to hopefully hosting another training session with you, and thank you very much for your time. Have a great rest of the day.